The rain had been falling since early morning, a steady, quiet kind of rain that didn't thunder or flash, just wrapped the city in a soft gray blanket. Puddles formed in the cracks of the sidewalk, streetlights reflected in the wet pavement, and most people hurried along with their collars turned up and heads down. But not her. She stood just outside the glass doors of a tall, modern building, 42 stories of steel and ambition, wearing a yellow raincoat 2 sizes too big, the hood slipping off every time she moved. Her sneakers were soaked through, her socks probably squishing with every step, but she didn't seem to care. She held a folded piece of notebook paper in one hand and a single bill in the other. $50 carefully smoothed out, folded twice, then tucked into her palm like a secret. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She just waited. Inside, high above the street, a man sat alone in an office that looked more like a museum than a workspace. Everything was clean lines and muted colors. Gray couch, black desk, white walls with one framed photo turned face down on a shelf. He hadn't touched his coffee in over an hour. The screen in front of him showed spreadsheets, graphs, projections, numbers that told a story of success, of control, of everything going exactly as planned. But none of it filled the silence. He used to talk to someone at the end of the day, someone who'd laugh at his dry jokes, who'd drag him out for walks even when he said he was too busy, who'd leave little notes in his briefcase just to say, "I love you." That was 5 years ago. Cancer took her quickly, and with her went the warmth from his life. He kept working, built more, earned more, but the house stayed quiet. The phone rarely rang unless it was business. Holidays came and went with takeout dinners and old movies playing in the background like background noise to his loneliness. He hadn't meant for it to turn out this way. He told himself he was fine. That solitude was a choice. But sometimes late at night he'd stare at the ceiling and wonder if he'd forgotten how to be human, how to connect, how to care without expecting something in return, how to just be with someone without an agenda. Today had been no different. Meetings, emails, decisions, no real conversation. Just the hum of efficiency. He finally stood, stretched his stiff shoulders, and reached for his coat. Time to go home. Again. Down on the street, the little girl saw the revolving doors start to spin. She took a deep breath, smoothed her raincoat, and stepped forward just as a man in a dark overcoat and polished shoes stepped out, opening a black umbrella with one practiced motion. He walked fast, eyes ahead, mind already on the drive home. The silent apartment, the microwave beep. He almost didn't see her, until his foot brushed against something small and solid. He stopped, looked down. There she was. Wet hair stuck to her cheeks, eyes wide but steady, holding out a piece of paper like it was the most important thing in the world. "Excuse me, sir?" Her voice was soft but clear, cutting through the sound of rain. He blinked, surprised. "Yes?" She held up the paper. On it, in careful handwriting, some letters a little crooked, others perfectly formed, were the words, "Need a dad for one day, $50. He stared, then looked at her face, then back at the sign. He thought maybe he'd misheard, or maybe this was some kind of prank, but her expression was serious, earnest, like she'd practiced this moment 100 times in her head. "I have $50, she said, unfolding the bill now and offering it to him. "I saved it all myself, from birthdays and losing teeth and not buying candy at lunch. I need someone to be my dad tomorrow, for school." He crouched slowly, bringing himself to her eye level. Raindrops landed on his shoulder, but he didn't move to brush them off. "Your dad?" She nodded. "It's family day at school. Everyone brings someone, mom, dad, grandma, uncle, whoever. Last year I brought my mom, but she had to leave after 20 minutes because her hospital shift started early. This year, she's working all night. And my real dad," she paused, then added quietly, "he doesn't live here anymore. He doesn't call." She didn't sound angry, just matter of fact, like explaining why the bus was late. He felt something tighten in his chest. He knew that tone. He'd used it himself as a kid when teachers asked about his father. "And you picked me. Why?" he asked gently. She studied him for a moment, the calm way he stood, the way he hadn't yelled or told her to go away, the quiet sadness in his eyes that she somehow recognized even though she couldn't name it. "You look like you know how to be quiet," she said, "and I need someone quiet. Not someone who'll make a big show, Not someone who'll ask a bunch of questions. Just someone who'll stand next to me, hold my hand during the sack race, eat pancakes without checking their phone. He almost smiled. You've thought this through? I had to, she said simply. I don't want to be the only one alone again. Those words hit him harder than he expected. He remembered being 9 years old, standing by the tetherball pole while other kids played with their parents during field day. He'd told himself he didn't care, but he'd cared, deeply. What's your name? He asked. Maya. Maya, he repeated, testing the sound of it. It felt warm, real. He looked at the $50 bill in her small hand. It wasn't just money, it was hope. It was her way of taking control in a world that kept letting her down. She wasn't begging. She was offering a fair trade. 1 day of presents for 1 day's pay. You're sure about this? He asked. She nodded fast. I've been watching this building for 2 days. You always leave at the same time. You walk alone. You don't talk on the phone. You seem safe. He didn't know whether to be flattered or concerned that she'd been watching him. But then again, kids notice things adults miss. All right, Maya, he said, standing slowly. I'll do it. Her whole face lit up, not with wild excitement, but with a quiet kind of relief, like a knot inside her had finally loosened. But, he added, you don't have to pay me. Keep your money, she shook her head firmly. No, it's a job. You're working. You should get paid. He couldn't help it. He smiled then, a real one, the first in weeks. Okay, then I accept the job. But only if I get to buy the pancakes. She thought about it for a full 3 seconds, then nodded. Deal, but only if you promise not to wear a suit. No suit, he agreed. Jeans and a sweater. Like a real dad. Good, she said, satisfied. He opened his umbrella a little wider and held it over both of them. Where do you live? I'll walk you home. Just 3 blocks that way, she said, pointing down the street. My mom gets off work soon. They walked side by side under the black umbrella, rain pattering softly around them. At first neither spoke, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that felt comfortable, like two people who understood that sometimes words aren't needed. After a minute, she asked, Do you have kids? No, he said. Never did. Do you like kids? He thought about it. I think I forgot how to be around them. But I'd like to remember. She nodded like that made perfect sense. They passed a bakery with warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. The smell of bread drifted out, mixing with the wet pavement. Maya's stomach growled softly. Hungry? He asked, a little. But I'm saving my snack money for tomorrow's ice cream truck. You're serious about this, huh? Family Day only happens once a year, she said, as if that explained everything. He admired her determination, her dignity. She wasn't asking for a hero, just someone to stand beside her for a few hours. When they reached a modest apartment building with flower boxes on the windows and a slightly chipped front door, a woman in blue scrubs stepped out, pulling a hood over her head. She looked exhausted but alert, her eyes scanning the street until they landed on Maya and the well-dressed stranger beside her. Her posture changed instantly, protective, wary. Mom, Maya called, running to her. This is, She turned back. I didn't ask your name. I'm Ethan, he said, stepping forward but keeping a respectful distance. I'm helping out with Maya's school event tomorrow. The woman, Maya's mother, crossed her arms. She looked from him to Maya, then to the $50 bill still clutched in her daughter's hand. Her expression was a mix of suspicion and worry. Helping how? She asked, voice low. Maya quickly explained. Family Day, no one available. Saved her own money. Found someone kind. Her mom listened, eyes never leaving Ethan's face. But as Maya spoke, the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. She saw the hope in her daughter's eyes, the same hope she'd tried to shield for years while working double shifts, skipping meals to pay for school supplies, saying no to sleepovers because she couldn't afford a babysitter. Finally, she looked directly at Ethan. You sure about this? I am, he said. She made a good offer. What do you do? She asked bluntly. I run a company, tech stuff, but tomorrow I'll just be a guy in jeans eating pancakes. She studied him another moment. The calm in his voice, the lack of arrogance, the way he kept his hands visible, not hiding anything. She'd learned to read people fast in her line of work, and something about him felt honest. All right, she said slowly, but be on time. 10 sharp, and no fancy car. She'll feel out of place if you pull up in a limo. No car at all, he said. I'll take the subway. Or walk, she gave a small nod. Good. As he turned to leave, Maya called after him, Don't forget the sack race. You have to hold my hand. I won't forget, he said, and meant it. Walking back to his car, the rain had softened to a mist. The city still looked gray, but something inside him felt different. Lighter, like he'd just agreed to something far bigger than a school event. Like he'd just said yes to a second chance, not just for her, but for himself. He thought about the empty apartment waiting for him, the silent dinner, the untouched photo frame on the shelf. For the first time in years, he didn't dread going home, because tomorrow he had a reason to get up, a reason to wear jeans, a reason to eat pancakes with someone who needed him, even if just for a day and maybe, just maybe. That would be enough to start filling the quiet. The next morning dawned clear and cool, the kind of autumn day that smells like fallen leaves and fresh pencils. Ethan woke earlier than usual, not to an alarm but to a quiet sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He stood in front of his closet for a full minute, staring at rows of tailored suits, silk ties, and polished shoes. Then he walked past them all and pulled out a pair of dark jeans he hadn't worn since his wife was alive, a soft gray sweater, and plain sneakers. He even left his watch behind. As he walked to the subway station, he kept checking his pockets, phone, wallet, keys, and then, almost as an afterthought, the folded piece of paper Maya had given him. He'd tucked it into his coat last night and forgotten about it until now. He opened it again. Need a dad for one day, $50. Below it, in smaller letters, she'd added, Pancakes at 10, sack race at 11, craft table after. Please don't be late, he smiled to himself. She'd planned it like a general. The school was a cheerful red brick building with bright murals on the walls and kids' drawings taped to every window. Parents milled around the front gate, some in work clothes, others in weekend sweatshirts, all holding coffee cups and chatting. Ethan felt out of place for a second, but then he saw her. Maya stood near the entrance, bouncing slightly on her toes, wearing a clean dress and a new-looking pair of shoes. When she spotted him, her whole face lit up. She ran over, not too fast, not too loud, just enough to show she was glad he came. You came, she said, breathless. Of course I came, he said, crouching down. I promised pancakes, she nodded seriously. And you're wearing jeans. I am. And no tie. No tie. She looked him up and down one more time, then gave a satisfied nod. Good. You look like a dad. He wasn't sure what to say to that, so he just stood and offered his hand. She took it without hesitation, her small fingers curling around his. Inside, the gym had been turned into a mini festival. Long tables held stacks of pancakes, syrup bottles, fruit bowls, and juice boxes. Kids ran around with powdered sugar on their cheeks. Parents laughed, and a teacher played soft music from a speaker in the corner. The air smelled like butter and maple syrup and childhood. Maya led him to an empty spot at a table. This is ours, she announced as if she'd reserved it. They got in line, filled their plates, and sat down. Ethan poured syrup slowly, watching how Maya carefully cut her pancake into neat squares before eating. She didn't talk much at first, just focused on her food, but every now and then she'd glance at him to make sure he was still there. After a few bites, she asked, Do you like pancakes? I do, he said. Especially with too much syrup, she grinned. Me too. A little boy from her class came over holding a juice box. Maya, who's that? This is my dad, she said without missing a beat. The boy nodded, unfazed, and asked if Ethan wanted to see his juice box rocket. Ethan said yes, and the boy demonstrated how it could blast off if you squeezed it just right. Maya watched, proud, like she'd introduced him to royalty. Later, during the craft table, they made picture frames out of popsicle sticks and glitter glue. Maya worked with intense concentration, tongue poking out the side of her mouth. Ethan fumbled with the glue, getting more on his fingers than on the stick. You're doing it wrong, she whispered, not unkindly. She took the glue from him and showed him how to squeeze just a dot. Like this. Not too much. Just enough to hold. He followed her instructions. You're good at this. I practice, she said. I make things for my mom when she's sad. He didn't ask why her mom was sad. He didn't need to. He could guess. At 11 a.m., the sack race began. Kids lined up in burlap sacks, parents cheering from the sidelines. Maya tugged his sleeve. You have to hold my hand when I run. I thought you had to hop in the sack by yourself. You do, but I get scared I'll fall, So you stand at the finish line and hold out your hand. That's the rule. He didn't know if that was actually a rule, but he nodded. Deal. When her turn came, she climbed into the sack, face serious. At the whistle, she hopped forward, a little wobbly at first, then steadier. Halfway through, she tripped but didn't fall. She caught herself, stood back up, and kept going. When she reached the end, Ethan was right there, hand outstretched. She grabbed it, breathless and grinning. I didn't fall. You didn't, he said, squeezing her hand gently. You were brave. She beamed like that was the best compliment in the world. After the race, they sat on a bench under a big oak tree, watching other families laugh and take photos. Maya leaned against him slightly, not clingy, just close. Do you ever come to school events? She asked. Not really, he admitted. I don't have kids, but you're good at it, she said. You listened. You didn't look at your phone once. He hadn't even thought about his phone. It was still in his pocket, silent. Thanks, he said. That means a lot. She was quiet for a moment, kicking at a leaf with her shoe. Then she asked, Do you miss your wife? The question came out so softly, so gently that it didn't feel intrusive. Just curious, like she was trying to understand him the way he was trying to understand her. He took a breath. Every day. Was she nice? The nicest, he said. She used to say the world needed more quiet kindness. Not big speeches. Just showing up. Maya nodded slowly. Like today. Like today, he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a group of kids chase bubbles. Then Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the $50 bill, still folded neatly. I think I should pay you now, she said. He shook his head. I told you keep it, but you worked. You were my dad all morning, and I got pancakes, a glitter frame, and a front row seat to the best sack race I've ever seen. That's payment enough, she looked unsure, but it's not fair. Sometimes, he said gently, the fairest thing is to let someone give you a gift. She thought about that. Then slowly she put the money back in her pocket. Okay, but if you ever need anything, like someone to water your plants or feed your fish, I'll do it for free. He laughed, a real warm laugh that surprised even him. I don't have plants or fish. You should get a plant, she said. Something small, so your house doesn't feel empty. He looked at her, really looked at her. This kid, who barely had enough to eat some days, was worried about his house feeling empty. Maybe I will, he said. As the event wound down, Maya's teacher came over. Maya, your mom just called. She's running late, traffic. She asked if someone could walk you home. Maya looked up at Ethan. I can do it, he said. The teacher smiled. Thanks, she lives just a few blocks away, right? Yes, Maya said. The blue door with flowers. They said goodbye to the school, to the pancake table, to the craft mess still drying on their fingers. As they walked, Maya chatted about her favorite book, about how she wanted to be a librarian when she grew up because books never leave, and about the stray cat she'd been leaving food for behind the laundromat. Ethan listened. Really listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak, not thinking about emails or meetings, just hearing her. When they reached her building, her mom wasn't home yet. Maya pulled out a key from her shoe, in case I get locked out, and let them in. The apartment was small but clean. A couch with a crocheted blanket, a kitchen table with 2 chairs, a fridge covered in drawings held up by magnets. On the counter sat a single potted plant, slightly drooping. This is my room, Maya said, opening a door to a space barely big enough for a bed and a bookshelf. Every shelf was full. I read every night. You've got a lot of friends in there, Ethan said, nodding at the books. She smiled. The best kind. Her mom arrived 10 minutes later, still in scrubs, looking even more tired than the day before. But when she saw Maya sitting at the table with Ethan, both of them sipping water from mismatched glasses, something in her expression softened. How was it? She asked Maya. The best family day ever, Maya said without hesitation. Her mom looked at Ethan. Thank you. He stood. She did all the work. I just showed up. That's the hardest part sometimes, the mom said quietly. He didn't stay long, didn't want to overstay. But as he left, Maya ran after him and pressed something into his hand, a small handmade card. On the front, in glitter glue, it said, Best Dad for a Day. Inside, she'd written, P.S. You can come back anytime, even if it's not family day. He tucked it into his pocket, right next to the sign she'd given him the day before. Walking home, the city felt different, brighter, fuller. He passed a flower shop and stopped, bought a small, healthy-looking plant, green leaves, sturdy stem, the kind that didn't need much but thrived with a little care. When he got to his apartment, he placed it on the windowsill, right where the afternoon sun would hit it. Then he took the framed photo from the shelf, the one he'd kept face down for 5 years, and turned it over. His wife smiled back at him, eyes full of the quiet kindness she'd always believed in. He sat down on the couch, not to work, not to scroll, but just to be. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like it was holding space, for memory, for hope, for the sound of a little girl's laughter echoing in his mind. He didn't know what came next, but he knew one thing for sure: he'd be back. Not because of the $50, but because somewhere between pancakes and popsicle sticks, he'd remembered what it felt like to matter to someone. And that was worth more than any fortune. Weeks passed, and what started as a one-day favor quietly became something more. Ethan didn't show up with grand gestures or expensive gifts. He came on Saturday mornings with a paper bag of donuts from the corner shop, sat at the small kitchen table while Maya did her homework, and listened, really listened, when she told him about her week. He fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom with a wrench he bought at the hardware store, not because he knew how, but because he wanted to try. He even helped her build a bird feeder out of a milk carton and string, which they hung from the fire escape, though no birds came for days. Maya's mom watched him carefully at first, arms crossed, always nearby but never interfering. She didn't trust easily. Life had taught her that kindness often came with strings, but Ethan never asked for anything. He didn't linger too long. He never mentioned money. He just showed up, did what he said he'd do, and left before dinner unless invited to stay. Slowly, her guard lowered. She started offering him coffee. Then a plate of leftovers. Then a chair at the table during Maya's school play rehearsal, where he sat in the back row, clapping the loudest when Maya forgot her lines but kept going anyway. Then, for his part, began to feel something shift inside him. The silence in his apartment no longer felt heavy. It felt like space waiting to be filled. He bought more plants, started cooking real meals instead of ordering in, even joined a weekend walking group near the park, just to be around people without an agenda. But the highlight of his week was still Saturday morning at the Blue Door apartment with the flower boxes. Then came the photo. It happened on a crisp October afternoon. Ethan had taken Maya to the public library, her favorite place, and they were walking back, laughing about a book with a talking raccoon, when a man with a camera stepped out from behind a parked car. "Mr. Caldwell," the man called. "Over here." "Who's the little girl?" "Is this your daughter?" Ethan froze. Maya clutched his hand tighter. He didn't answer, just pulled Maya close and kept walking, head down. But the flash went off anyway. The next morning, the photo was everywhere. Online news sites, social media, even the local paper. Reclusive billionaire spotted with mystery child. Adoption rumors swirl. Some headlines were kind. Tech titan finds new purpose. Others were cruel. PR stunt or paternity secret. At the office, his assistant handed him a printed stack of articles, face pale. "The board is asking for a statement." His CFO called twice before lunch. "People are talking, Ethan. Investors are nervous. Is this a personal matter or a company issue?" He wanted to snap back. "It's none of your business," but he stayed calm. "It's personal, and it stays that way." But the damage was done. Strangers messaged Maya's school. Reporters camped near her building. One even knocked on her door asking if she was the adopted daughter of the tech CEO. Maya's mom shut the blinds and unplugged the phone. That night, over a quiet dinner of soup and toast, she looked at Ethan with tired eyes. "This has to stop," she said, not unkindly, but firmly. "I appreciate everything you've done. But this attention, it's scaring her. And it's putting us at risk." Ethan felt like he'd been punched. "I didn't mean for any of this." "I know," she said. "But good intentions don't erase the headlines." Maya sat silently, pushing her soup around the bowl. She didn't cry. She just looked small, smaller than usual. Ethan left that night with a knot in his stomach. He told himself it was better this way, that he was protecting them by stepping back. But deep down, he knew part of him was running, just like his own father had done. So he stopped coming. No more Saturday donuts. No more homework help. No more walks to the library. He told himself it was temporary, just until things calmed down. But days turned into weeks and the silence grew louder than ever. At first, Maya called. Left messages on his office line, short, careful ones. Hi, it's me. Just checking if you're okay. Then the bird feeder finally got a sparrow. I named him Mr. Beak. Then nothing. He listened to each message a dozen times, heart aching, but never called back. He told himself he was doing the right thing. That distance was safer, but every time he passed the flower shop, he remembered the plant he'd bought after Family Day. It was still alive, still green, but it hadn't grown much. Like it was waiting. Meanwhile, pressure at work mounted. The board wanted him focused. His team needed decisions. He threw himself into projects, worked late, skipped meals. But the spreadsheets felt hollow. The meetings felt pointless. Even the view from his office, once a symbol of control, now just reminded him of a rainy afternoon and a little girl holding out $50 like it was the most precious thing in the world. One evening, he found the handmade card she'd given him, tucked in his coat pocket. Best dad for a day. He traced the glitter letters with his thumb and wondered if she still believed that. Back at the apartment with the blue door, life went on, but quieter. Maya stopped talking about Mr. Ethan. She stopped setting an extra cup at the table on Saturdays. She still read every night, but now she read under the covers with a flashlight, as if hiding from something. Her mom noticed. She saw the way Maya lingered by the window on Saturday mornings, how she stopped mentioning the bird feeder, how she flinched when a car slowed too long outside. She wanted to call him, to yell at him for disappearing. But she also understood somewhere deep down that he wasn't cruel. He was scared. And fear made people do strange things. Still, she couldn't fix this for Maya. Some wounds only the person who caused them could heal. Then came the school talent show. Maya had signed up weeks ago to read a poem she'd written called The Day My Dad Showed Up. She'd practiced every night, standing in front of the mirror, voice steady, hands clasped. But as the day neared and no word came from Ethan, her confidence wavered. The night of the show, the auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, siblings, all there to cheer. Maya sat backstage in a chair too big for her, clutching her poem, knuckles white. Her mom squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to go on if you're not ready. Maya shook her head. I have to. I wrote it for him. But when her name was called, she walked onto the stage alone. The spotlight felt hot. The silence felt heavy. She looked out at the crowd, searching just in case he wasn't there. She took a breath, unfolded her paper, and began to read. Her voice was small at first, then stronger. The poem was simple, honest, about pancakes, glitter glue, a hand held during a sack race, and a quiet man who showed up when no one else could. At the end, she said, he left. But I still remember how it felt to not be alone. There wasn't a dry eye in the front row. Afterward, kids hugged her. Teachers praised her courage. But Maya just nodded, took her paper, and walked straight out the back door into the cool night air. She didn't cry. She just sat on the steps, staring at the stars, wondering if he'd ever hear the poem, wondering if he'd care. Back in his penthouse, Ethan scrolled mindlessly through emails, trying to ignore the emptiness. His phone buzzed, a notification from a local news site. He almost ignored it, but something made him click. It was a short article. Local girl moves audience with poem about dad for a day. Below it, a blurry photo of Maya on stage, head high, paper in hand. His breath caught. He read the excerpt they'd printed. He didn't stay. But for one day I had a dad. And that was enough to make me believe I mattered. Enough to make me believe I mattered. The words hit him like a wave. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over. He grabbed his coat, his keys, didn't even check the time. He drove through the city, heart pounding, not sure what he'd say, only knowing he had to try. But when he reached the Blue Door building, all the lights were off. It was past midnight. He stood on the sidewalk, rain starting to fall again, just like that first day. He didn't knock, didn't call, just stood there soaked, staring up at the dark windows, feeling like the loneliest man in the world. Not because he was alone, but because he'd walked away from someone who needed him. And for the first time, he understood. Showing up once wasn't enough. Real care wasn't a transaction. It wasn't a performance for Family Day. It was showing up again and again, even when it was hard, even when you were scared. He turned and walked back to his car, not with answers, but with a new kind of ache, one that demanded he do better. Because somewhere behind those dark windows was a little girl who had believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself, and that kind of trust, it wasn't something you walked away from. It was something you fought your way back to. December came in with a sharp bite, frost clinging to window panes and sidewalks dusted with the first real snow of the season. The city moved slower, wrapped in scarves and quiet anticipation of the holidays. But inside a small community hospital on the east side, time felt urgent, not calm. Maya had been coughing for days. First just a tickle, then a deep rattle in her chest that wouldn't quit. Her mom, already stretched thin between double shifts and holiday overtime, finally took her in when Maya's fever spiked to 103 and she couldn't catch her breath. The doctor said it was pneumonia. Not life-threatening, but serious enough to need rest, fluids, and close watching. They admitted her to a room with pale blue walls, a narrow bed, and a chair that folded into a cot. Her mom sat beside her, holding her hand, eyes red from exhaustion and worry. Maya drifted in and out of sleep, her small frame swallowed by blankets, her breathing shallow but steady. Around midnight, as the hospital settled into its nighttime rhythm of beeping machines and hushed footsteps, Maya stirred. She opened her eyes, looked around, and whispered, "Is he coming?" Her mom gently brushed hair from her forehead. "Who, sweetie?" "The man. The one who was my dad for a day." Her mom hesitated. She hadn't mentioned him since he'd stopped coming. She didn't want to hurt Maya more by bringing up someone who'd vanished, but now in the dim light of the hospital room, with her daughter pale and fragile, she couldn't lie. "I don't know," she said softly. "He hasn't called." Maya nodded slowly, then closed her eyes again. But a few minutes later she opened them and said, "Can you call him? Just once?" Her mom sighed. She didn't have his personal number, only the main office line, which she'd tried weeks ago and gotten nowhere. But something in Maya's voice, the quiet hope, not demanding, just asking, made her reach for her phone. She dialed the company switchboard, expecting voicemail, but at 12:17 a.m. a sleepy voice answered. She explained who she was, what had happened, and that Maya just kept asking for him. The receptionist, surprised, said, "Hold on." And after a long pause, a different voice came on, deep, alert, like he hadn't been sleeping at all. "This is Ethan." Her mom took a breath. "It's Maya's mother. She's in the hospital. Pneumonia, she's okay, but she's been asking for you." There was silence on the other end. Not cold, not angry, just heavy. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He didn't ask for the room number. He didn't make excuses. He just came. He arrived not in a sleek black car, but in a plain sedan wearing a thick coat and boots dusted with snow. He carried a paper bag, still warm, from the all-night bakery Maya loved. Inside, 2 plain donuts, one with sprinkles, just how she liked them. He knocked softly before entering. Maya's eyes fluttered open when she heard his voice. "You came," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I did," he said, pulling the chair close to her bed. He didn't sit right away, just looked at her, really looked, and for the first time let himself feel the full weight of what his absence had cost. He set the donuts on the bedside table. "I brought your favorite," she managed a small smile. "You remembered." "Of course I remembered." Her mom stood quietly by the window, watching. She saw the way his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the blanket, saw the guilt in his eyes, but also something else, determination. Maya reached out her hand. He took it without hesitation. "I saved my allowance," she said, her voice weak but clear. "Do you still want to be my dad for one more day?" The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. It wasn't a demand. It was an offer. A second chance. Ethan's throat tightened. He looked down at their joined hands, hers small and pale, his large and steady, and nodded. More than anything, he stayed all night. When Maya drifted off, he sat in the dark, watching her chest rise and fall. He listened to the quiet hum of the oxygen monitor, the distant sound of a nurse's shoes on linoleum. He thought about all the times he'd chosen safety over connection, silence over risk, and he realized love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, even when you were afraid you'd fail. In the morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds. Maya woke up stronger, color returning to her cheeks. Her mom brought her toast and apple juice. Ethan stayed until the doctor said she could go home, then insisted on driving them. Back at the apartment, he didn't leave right away. He helped make tea, fluffed Maya's pillows, and checked the bird feeder on the fire escape. Still empty, but he promised to refill it. Then, as Maya napped, he sat with her mom at the kitchen table. "I owe you both an apology," he said quietly. She stirred her tea, not looking at him. "Why did you stop coming?" He didn't make excuses. "I got scared. The photos, the rumors. I thought I was protecting you by staying away. But I was really just protecting myself." She nodded slowly. "Fear makes us do strange things." "I know," he said. "But I don't want to be that person anymore." She finally looked at him. "What do you want then?" He took a breath. "I don't want to be a dad for a day. I want to be someone she can count on. Not because of money. Not because of pity. Just because I care. I'll do homework. I'll come to school plays. I'll fix the sink when it leaks. I won't show up with cameras or promises I can't keep. Just me showing up." She studied him for a long moment, saw the sincerity in his eyes, the humility in his posture. She also saw the risk of more attention, of broken trust if he left again. But she also saw Maya's face when he walked into the hospital room. The relief, the light returning. "Okay," she said finally, but no grand gestures. No surprises. Just consistency. "And if you ever decide this isn't what you want, you tell her yourself. Don't disappear." "I won't," he said. "I promise." That weekend, he came back not with gifts but with a library book Maya had mentioned wanting, a bag of birdseed, and a thermos of hot chocolate. He sat on the floor while she colored, asked about her favorite chapter in her new book, and stayed for dinner. Simple pasta shared at the small table. He didn't try to be a father. He didn't pretend to be family. He just became a steady presence, a safe harbor in her storm. Word got around school, of course. Kids asked questions, but Maya just said, "He's my friend. He helps with math." And that was enough. At work, Ethan made changes too. He delegated more. Took real weekends off. Told his board, "My personal life is not a business strategy." Some investors grumbled. Others respected his clarity. He didn't care either way. For the first time, he knew what mattered. One evening, as he walked home from the subway, he passed the flower shop. He went in and bought another plant, this one with bright green leaves and tiny white flowers. When he got home, he placed it next to the first one on the windowsill. Both were thriving now, both reaching for the light. He sat on his couch, not to work, but to read a book Maya had lent him, the one and only Ivan. On the cover, she'd written in pencil, "For the quiet man who showed up." He smiled, turned the page, and read until the streetlights came on. Meanwhile, in a small apartment with a blue door, Maya watered the plant on their kitchen windowsill, the one Ethan had brought weeks ago before everything went quiet. It had drooped for a while, but now new leaves were sprouting. Strong, green, alive. Her mom watched from the doorway, arms crossed but smiling. She asked if he's coming Saturday, she said. "He is," Maya replied, not looking up. "He always does now." And for the first time in a long time, that simple sentence, "he always does now," felt like enough. Not perfect, not dramatic, just true, because real connection isn't built in a single day. It's built in the quiet moments after, the showing up, the staying, the choosing each other again and again, even when it's hard. And sometimes that's how families are made, not by blood, not by law, but by the quiet daily act of saying, "I'm here." 10 years had passed since that rainy afternoon outside the glass tower, but the memory still lived in the quiet spaces between things, in the way a certain song played on the radio, in the smell of pancakes on a Saturday morning, in the sight of a $50 bill tucked inside an old book like a bookmark from another life. The penthouse no longer felt like a museum. It had bookshelves now, real ones, slightly crooked, filled with dog-eared paperbacks and school projects preserved in plastic sleeves. A faded quilt from a middle school art fair hung over the back of the couch. The kitchen, once sterile and unused, smelled of garlic and cinnamon on most nights, thanks to the cooking lessons he'd taken just so he could make proper meals when she came over. He still ran the company, but differently. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations, hired a strong leadership team, and focused instead on long-term vision. and on building something else. A foundation that supported after-school programs, tutoring for kids in underfunded schools, and housing assistance for single parents working night shifts. It wasn't flashy. It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. And every Saturday, without fail, he took the subway to the same neighborhood, walked up to the same building with the blue door and flower boxes, though the flowers changed with the seasons, and knocked. Now, the door was usually opened by a young woman with the same steady eyes and quiet confidence he remembered from the girl in the yellow raincoat. She was taller, of course, her voice deeper, her laugh quicker, but the way she looked at him like he was home hadn't changed at all. Today was special. It was her 18th birthday. He arrived with a wrapped box and a paper bag from the old bakery, still open, still making the same donuts with sprinkles. She met him at the door in jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back, eyes bright. "You're early," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "Never too early for birthdays," he replied, handing her the bag. "And I brought the good kind," she grinned. "The kind with extra sprinkles?" "The kind with extra sprinkles." Inside, her mom, older now, hair streaked with gray but posture just as strong, was setting out plates in the small dining area. The apartment had grown over the years, too. New curtains, a second bookshelf, a framed photo on the wall of the three of them at Maya's high school graduation. They ate cake at the table, store-bought, but with handmade frosting, and talked about college applications, her acceptance letter to a state university 2 hours away, and her plan to study education. "I want to teach kids who feel invisible," she said. "The ones who sit in the back and never raise their hand." He nodded. "You'll be good at that." After cake, she handed him a small flat package wrapped in brown paper. "This is for you." He opened it slowly. Inside was a framed photograph, the one from Family Day all those years ago. He was crouched beside her in the school gym, both of them holding glitter-covered picture frames mid-laugh. Someone must have taken it with a phone and printed it later. At the bottom, in her familiar handwriting, she'd written, "You didn't just play my dad for a day. You became my family." He didn't speak for a moment, just held the frame, thumb brushing the glass. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, but he was smiling. "I kept the $50, she said softly. "All these years. It's in my savings account now." "I never spent it. Why not?" he asked. "Because it wasn't really about the money," she said. "It was about you saying yes," he nodded. "Saying yes was the best decision I ever made." Later, as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, they sat on the fire escape, the same one where they'd hung the bird feeder all those years ago. It was empty now, but the hooks were still there, rusted but sturdy. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't stopped you that day?" she asked, sipping hot chocolate from a chipped mug. "Every day," he said, "and I thank my luck that you did." She was quiet for a moment, watching a sparrow hop along the railing. "I used to think family was something you were born into, but you taught me it's something you choose, over and over." He looked at her, not as the little girl who needed a dad for a day, but as the young woman she'd become. Kind, thoughtful, resilient. "You taught me that too," he said. "You showed me that showing up matters more than anything." She leaned her head against his shoulder just like she used to when she was small. "Will you visit me at college?" "Every chance I get," he said. "And I'll bring donuts," she laughed. "With extra sprinkles?" "Always." That evening, after he'd helped clean up and said goodbye to her mom, he walked back to the subway. The city buzzed around him, cars honking, people rushing, but he felt calm, full, like his life finally made sense. He didn't go straight home. Instead, he stopped by the community center his foundation supported. Inside, a group of kids were gathered around a table, doing homework with volunteer tutors. He watched from the doorway for a moment, unnoticed. One boy, maybe 8 years old, sat alone at the edge, head down, pencil tapping nervously on his notebook. Something about him reminded Ethan of himself, of Maya, of all the kids who just needed someone to see them. He walked over and pulled up a chair. "Mind if I join you?" The boy looked up, surprised. "You're not a teacher." "No," Ethan said, "but I'm good at math, and I've got time." The boy hesitated, then slid his worksheet over. "I don't get this part." Ethan leaned in. "Let's figure it out together." He stayed for an hour. Didn't mention who he was. Didn't offer money. Just helped with fractions. Listened to the boy talk about his dog. and walked him to the bus stop when it was time to go. As he finally headed home, the night air crisp and clear, he thought about how life had come full circle. Not in a grand, dramatic way, but in small, quiet acts of care. He hadn't fixed the world. He hadn't even fixed himself completely. But he'd learned to be present, to listen, to show up. Back in his apartment, he placed Maya's framed photo on his desk, right next to the 2 plants on the windowsill, both lush now, leaves broad and green, reaching toward the light. He sat down, opened his laptop, and began drafting an email to the foundation's board. He wanted to expand the tutoring program, add weekend workshops, maybe even start a scholarship in Maya's name, not because she needed it, but because other kids might. Outside, the city hummed on, but inside, for the first time in a long time, there was peace, because he'd learned that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect families. It's about showing up on a rainy day. It's about pancakes and glitter glue and holding a hand during a sack race. It's about staying when it gets hard. And sometimes it's about a little girl with $50 and enough courage to ask for what she needed. And in the end, that was more than enough. Years later, when people asked him what changed his life, he never talked about deals or companies or money. He just smiled and said, "A kid once gave me a job. Best one I ever had." And somewhere, in a college dorm room 2 hours away, a young woman pinned a new photo to her bulletin board. Her, him, and her mom, arms around each other at graduation. Beneath it, she wrote in bold letters, "Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up." The story didn't end with a fairy tale. There were still hard days, misunderstandings, moments of doubt. But through it all, they chose each other, again and again, and in a world that often feels cold and fast, that kind of quiet loyalty, that daily act of saying, "I'm here," is the truest kind of magic there is.